everyone, welcome back. You have made it to the final step in this series of rehydrating dried sourdough chips. So like I've said previously, if you got your sourdough dried from me or gifted from somebody else, this is the 6 easy steps on how to rehydrate it and get it ready for baking. This is the last step in the series, and I hope you are so proud of yourself because I know I am proud of you for making it this far. Now, this is just the beginning of your sourdough journey, guys. Don't think it stops here. You are going to become obsessed with making sourdough bread, and for good reason, because 1, it is fun, and 2, they taste delicious. You are going to be making bread left and right, handing it to your neighbors. You're going to be making new friends, and who knows, you're starting your own sourdough journey. You might even start a small business selling it, which is phenomenal, and I am so proud of you for even the thought of that. So on step 6, this is going to be the feeding schedule of how you're going to feed your sourdough starter from here on out whenever you're ready to start baking bread. So when you're doing sourdough, there is a timeline of when you feed your sourdough starter to when you bake bread. So if you're using the basic bread recipe that has come with your purchase of these dried sourdough in the download, that's the basic one. That's my go-to. That's one my kids love, my family loves. That comes out perfect every single time. There is a timeline of when you're going to need to start it. So for instance, or for example, if you want to bake bread, if you want fresh bread for Sunday dinner, you're going to want to start feeding your sourdough starter Thursday night. So you're going to feed your sourdough starter Thursday night, let it rise, let it drop. Then again, you're going to feed it Friday night, let it rise, and then Saturday morning, you're going to start baking your bread or start mixing up the dough. Then you're going to fold it throughout the day. And then you're going to refrigerate it overnight on Saturday night. Sunday morning, you wake up, you bake it, you shape it, you bake it. Sunday night, dinner, you have it. So that's the ideal timeline. So yes, it does seem a little long and a lot, but there's 2 days where you're just feeding it, and then 1 day, which is really only Saturday, the day you're preparing your dough, mixing it up and folding it. That's the most hands-on day. And that's basically it. There's tons of sourdough recipes out there. Once you get your sourdough starter active and bubbly and going, you're gonna just love all the recipes out there, all the variations of sourdough, from adding cheese to it, to adding jalapenos, to adding some fruits and nuts, to chocolate. There's so many endless possibilities. So without further ado, let's get started on step number 6. Like I said, this is going to be your daily feeding schedule from here on out. This is what you're going to do. So let's zoom on in, grab your starter, grab your water, grab your all-purpose flour, and let's get started. Okay, so you got your kitchen scale, you got another clean glass jar that you're set off to the side, and this is just to weigh out your starter to make sure you have 4 ounces. You have your 4 ounces of lukewarm water, and then your 4 ounces of generic all-purpose flour. Any brand will work. And you also have a small spatula. So grab your kitchen scale. First, let's see what we're working with here. We're going to take off our cover. And don't be surprised if there's fruit flies in there. That's totally normal. But you can see how active and bubbly it is. It definitely has a fermented smell to it, and it is ready to bake. So from here, you can definitely bake with this, but I'm going to feed it again. So first, we're going to grab our clean glass jar. And ideally, when you're ready to bake with it, you want to give it at least 8 to 12 hours to get bubbly before you use it. So I always feed my starter if I want to bake bread. I always feed it the night before, wake up in the morning, and it's perfect. So to your clean glass jar, you're going to first stir it down. You can see it deflate a little bit. Just give it a quick stir. And then you're going to weigh out 4 ounces of starter. So just pour it into your clean glass jar. And remember, this is a 1:1:1 ratio. Flour, starter, water. And you can do it in any amount. You don't have to do 4 ounces every time. You can do 6 ounces if you're going to do a double batch. You can do 130 grams. You can do 150 grams. But you always want to make sure that you weigh out enough to not only bake your bread, but to also have some left over to feed it again. So you definitely want to always make sure you have enough. So this is your discard. And this you can just add to your refrigerator, put in a container, put in your refrigerator, dump it in the garbage, or gift it to someone. This is my discard that I just keep in my refrigerator, and I'm just gonna pour the rest of it in there and then just pop it into the refrigerator because I plan on making like pancakes with it, waffles with it, and maybe some quick breads. So just pour that in there. Make sure you get it all out of your jar. I'm going to dump the rest in the garbage can, and then you just cover this with a lid and pop it in your refrigerator, and it will last about 2 to 3 weeks in your refrigerator. Now that the jar is all emptied out, and like I said, every once in a while you are going to want to wash this out and start fresh, but we're not doing that today. You're going to place it back on your scale. You're going to tare your scale, set it to 0, and then you're going to pour your starter back into the jar. And I like it to do it this way just to double check the weight and measure the volume of it to make sure it's the correct amount so that I know what I'm adding in as far as flour and water goes. So I don't want to think I'm taking out a certain amount and add in the wrong amount of water and flour, and then it just not work. So equal parts, whatever you take out, put back in the same amount of flour and water. Okay, so see, it's like 5 grams short. So I'm just going to add in, oh, now it is. Okay, so to this, we're gonna add in our lukewarm water. Just right in there. And then we're also gonna add in our all-purpose flour. The all-purpose flour, I just like to scoop it in there, right in, and make sure you get it all in there. Any brand of all-purpose flour works. I know I've said it in every step. I have said any brand, and it's true. Any brand will work. I just buy what's on sale at the store, and I just use that. I've used the high-end brands, I've used the lower-end brands, and it still comes out perfect every single time, which is why I created this sourdough starter to be like that. Super easy. So now you're just gonna give it a mix, get it to look like pancake batter. Try and scrape it off the sides as much as you can, and then you're going to leave this on the counter overnight and let it get bubbly. Now, if you're feeding it in the morning and you don't want to bake bread that day, you want to feed it again that night. Does that make sense? So if you feed it, say 8 in the morning, and you're not going to bake bread or start the dough until the next morning, you're going to want to feed it again that night. 2 feedings in a day, if so be. Or you just feed it at night. But you definitely want to make sure you feed it at least 8 to 12 hours before you start with the bread. So give it a good time to rise. So even if you feed it in the morning, you can start baking the bread, making the dough that night if you want to. If you don't plan on baking it until the next morning, feed it again before you go to bed. So just scrape off the sides of your jar as best you can. And then just cover it up and let it rest. So I'm gonna let this rest, and then we'll start baking bread. So that's all it takes to rehydrate your dough. So now that your sourdough is all hydrated, it's gonna get active and bubbly. Now it's time to bake bread. Don't be afraid, don't be nervous, get excited because you're gonna love it. So the next video after this is how to do the basic sourdough bread that I have in the digital download after you have purchased your dried sourdough starter chips. It comes with the downloadable instructions and recipe. That's what we're doing next, and it's super easy. Like I said before, you do want to make sure your sourdough starter is active and bubbly. Feed it before you go to bed. And then when you wake up in the morning, let's start baking bread. So get excited, guys, because you're only about a day away from having some fresh bread. I'll see you next time.